Hi, and welcome to this short webinar by Consortium looking at service user involvement. So we'll be taking a look at the rationale, what are the benefits of service user involvement, then looking at ways to involve your service users, the different methods, and lastly, looking at how best to respond to your user input, so reporting back your findings. So let's start by taking a look at the benefits of service user involvement. Your youth members will feel more engaged and connected if they feel listened to and can see their ideas being put into practice. It's also important to ensure the services you offer are actually meeting your members' needs. And this is particularly relevant if your group or service was set up some time ago because the original needs and the original reason for setting up your service may have since changed. You'll have new members coming through, so it's really important to have a regular form of consultation to make sure that your service is meeting your current members' needs. And another great reason to involve your service users is young people often come up with really creative ideas to barriers that perhaps staff and volunteers wouldn't come up with. Another benefit of service user involvement is grant funders often ask questions such as, how have you involved your community in developing your project? Or how do you know there is a need for this project? So demonstrating that you have actively listened to your service users is an excellent way to respond to these types of questions and will strengthen your application and improve your chances of success with your funding bid. To evidence the need, you can include national and local research and statistics, which are also important, but these can be really strengthened by including your own research with your local and unique community members. So let's take a look at the different ways to involve your service users, starting with consultation, looking at surveys. So surveys are a relatively quick and easy way to get your members involved. You can use a survey to do a piece of research, for example, understanding issues that members may be facing, or the survey could be around your specific services that you're delivering. There are various free online tools such as SurveyMonkey that allow you to create an online questionnaire which you can get out to your members via email or via your website and social media, as well as using good old-fashioned pen and paper. Do take time to think through what information you're seeking to obtain and do trial the survey before you share it across your membership. Online tools, for example, sometimes provide options for multiple answers to a particular question, but it requires certain formatting of the tool. So if you've done that incorrectly, it might be that you've said, please tick as many options as you like, and when the person tries to, they discover that it only lets them tick one option. So there'd be nothing more frustrating than sending out a survey to your members and discovering they can't actually answer it as intended. So do take that time to trial it, even if it's just with a couple of colleagues, to make sure all of the questions make sense and that they're able to answer it as intended. Another way of conducting consultation with your service users is through focus groups. These are a good way to obtain detailed qualitative information. Focus group is really just bringing together a number of your members and having a facilitated or directed discussion. If you have a very large membership, it can be useful to think about using both a survey and a focus group together. Make sure you have clear questions ready in advance to ask your focus group members, and do agree ground rules to avoid chaos. You could potentially end up with everyone trying to talk at once, or you may have an individual who dominates and takes over the discussion. So think about ground rules such as one person speaking at a time, potentially agreeing a time slot for each person. Make sure every member gets their say. Another method of consultation is using a suggestion box, and this can be a good option to obtain ongoing feedback. You simply need to invite your members to jot down their suggestions and post them in a box. So make sure it's kept somewhere visible with a supply of pens and paper. This option does require some ongoing management. You'll need to check the box regularly and have a suitable system in place to respond to the suggestions. So, for example, you might post your responses on a notice board or via a newsletter. You can also use this option if you have a specific question you'd like feedback on. So you can let your members know the box will be available for a specific period of time and you're asking for their input on a particular question. For example, you might ask your members to come up with a name for a new group. Another option to consider in terms of getting your members involved is thinking about setting up a service user forum or a youth council. So this is a great way of developing a more formal option for your service users to get involved at a strategic level. Setting up a youth council will require a greater level of commitment, so in terms of time and costs, including staff time to coordinate the council, potentially room hire for the meetings, and there may be other costs involved. So it does require a greater level of commitment, but you will find that it will enable you to involve your youth members at a deeper and strategic level. So as with any new project or venture, do discuss it first with your colleagues, with your board of trustees, a board of directors, and determine if you do have the capacity to go ahead and proceed. So if you've decided to go ahead and set up a youth council, there's a few questions that are useful to think about with regards to membership. So for example, will you have a maximum number of places on your forum, or will it be open to anyone who's interested? And if that's the case, do you have the capacity to manage if, for example, 30 young people turn up for the first meeting? So if you decide that you want to limit the number of places, you'd then need to think about some form of selection process. Are you seeking individuals from different backgrounds? For example, a rep for people of colour, a trans rep, and so on? Or would you want the membership to be open to everyone, and then once the group is formed, have a look at different areas of responsibility? Do you want your members to serve for a specific period of time? And with youth councils, this quite often lends itself to follow the school academic year. And if you decide that the membership will be ongoing and there won't be a specific time frame, this links back to the first point about the maximum number of places on a forum. If you have limited the number of places and membership is ongoing, potentially that might prevent new people coming through. So it's something to consider. And can members apply to join at any point, or will you have a specific recruitment period? And you may have other questions that you want to work through depending on the way in which your group is set up. And it's important to give it some consideration before you go ahead and invite members to apply or join. So the next stage is recruitment. It's helpful to have a brief outline of the role so that your service users know what's expected of them, particularly in terms of a time commitment. You may wish to ask members to apply to join the forum, but remember this is not a paid job, so you should try and keep the process brief and simple. Consider different ways that members can apply to increase accessibility. For example, if a written form might put off members, could they submit a short video clip? Schedule meeting dates for your forum and do stick to them. Your members will soon lose interest if meeting dates are changed or cancelled, as they will rightly feel that it's not a priority for your organisation. In the very first meeting of a new forum, use the opportunity to find out how members would like to get involved, as well as sharing your ideas, and agree on the forum's specific roles and remit. In the first meeting, it is also helpful to talk through with members how the forum will operate on a practical level and agree some ground rules. So some of the factors you might like to consider would include the meeting timings, so that everyone is clear when the meetings will start, how long they run for, and for example, whether you agree particular break times. You may also like to consider how best to communicate outside of meetings, and this can be important if members will have actions to carry out in between your forum meetings, or for example, if you plan to share minutes. Members will need to know how and who to inform if they cannot attend a meeting. This is especially important to make sure their message does get through to the right person. And linked to this, what happens if a member just doesn't participate? So, for example, they cancel 4 or 5 meetings in a row. As a group, you might like to agree a particular cut-off after which someone would deem to be no longer a member of the forum. You can also ask the members themselves if they have any other factors they'd like to include within the ground rules, so that it's a collaborative process that everybody has agreed. There are lots of different ways your youth council or youth forum might get involved with your organisation. So, for example, they might contribute at trustee or board of director meetings. Individuals or subgroups within the youth council might take on a lead in a particular area, such as fundraising. Your council reps might act as ambassadors for new members. So when someone joins your youth group or youth service, your council members might be there to welcome them. And they might want to contribute ideas to funding bids. It's also really important to get your youth council to provide feedback and ideas on your existing services. Again, going back to the beginning of this session, we talked about the importance for funders. They want to see how you've consulted your membership. It's also great to get their feedback and ideas around the development of new services. Do also ask the members themselves, because they may have other ideas of ways in which they'd like to get involved to make a positive impact within the community or with your organisation. If it is agreed that your youth council reps will come along and contribute at a trustee or board of directors meeting, then there are a couple of other points to keep in mind. So it's helpful to agree the specific times that your youth council members will join. This can often work best if you ask them to come along at the beginning of the meeting or following a break period. Otherwise, it could be rather disruptive if they're arriving during an ongoing section of the meeting. Do ensure that there are clear agenda items relevant to your youth council, so there's a clear purpose for their attendance. It wouldn't be fair on the youth council members if they're just sort of sitting in the background. Nobody quite knows why they're there. They're not sure whether they should contribute or not. So do make sure you have some very clear agenda items or questions to involve the council. Ensure that any confidential meeting information is kept away during their visit. Obviously, the purpose of a youth council and involving your service users is to be as transparent as possible, but there may be times or circumstances that your meeting might have information that is particularly confidential. It could be around staffing issues, for example, or funding issues. So just make sure that all of the board members are aware and that anything confidential is kept to one side when the youth council is visiting. And linked to that, only share minutes if it's appropriate to do so, or it might be that you just share minutes of the section that the youth council joined. Do keep in mind that youth councils may attract a certain type of membership, such as individuals with strong opinions and those with the confidence to speak in front of others. As the purpose of the youth council is to obtain service user views, you may need to consider ways to ensure it is representative. One way to achieve this is to task the youth council with engaging your wider membership. You may, for example, consider using a mix of the other methods we've explored, such as a survey and a focus group, and tasking your youth council reps to take a lead in getting your wider membership involved. You'll also need to think about incentives. So if you've set up a youth council, it is really important to keep your members motivated. After all, they're supporting your group and they're likely strengthening your grant applications as a result of their contributions. So what are you offering them in return? This is often similar to volunteer schemes and may include, for example, references to support their study or work applications. You might want to think about thank you events to acknowledge and celebrate their contributions. You may also want to provide a certificate or even look at ways to accredit their contributions to the council. And of course, as this is all about user involvement, one of the best options is to ask the council themselves. They may have ideas of ways they'd like to celebrate, perhaps an end of year event or trip or outing. So do get them involved as well and find out how they'd like the group to celebrate. So lastly, we're just going to take a quick look at responding to user inputs and reporting your findings. And it is so important to share your findings with your members and let them know any actions that are being taken forward. Your members will soon lose interest in providing feedback if they don't ever get to hear what came of it. That includes letting them know if something can't go ahead and explaining why, so at least they're in the loop and understand the process that's taken place. With that in mind, do be open and honest with regards to actions and feedback. You may find that your members do not have a clear understanding of the cost implications associated with delivering services. So it can be really helpful to share this with your members so they get a better understanding of why it is they can't have that residential Pride Float and new building all in the same month. Often members also don't realise the timeframes involved in funding. So if you let them know, yeah, we're going to go ahead and look at getting some funding for this new service, they may wonder 3-4 months down the line why nothing's happened. So keep them informed of the timeframes so that they know something is going on in the background, but these things can take up to 6 months for funding. So you'll need to think about the best way to provide feedback to ensure all of your members are updated, and this may be linked to the way in which your members have been involved. So for example, if you have set up a service user forum, you might have a system of providing minutes, or you may choose to allocate a small amount of time at the beginning of each meeting in order to give updates and feedback. And if your broader membership has been involved, for example, through surveys or consultation, you might want to give an announcement during a session. Although do keep in mind, you won't necessarily have your full membership in attendance at any given session or social group. So you might also want to provide the information via your website or social media posts, or if it's more of an internal update that you wouldn't want in the public domain, this could be via a members newsletter or a notice board. And of course, don't forget to actually ask your members. They may come up with some really creative solutions and ideas as to how best to share and report your findings. We hope this has given you a brief insight into the different ways to involve service users in your organisation. For further support, consortium members can access a range of resources on our website, and you can access support from our engagement team. And if your group is not a member of Consortium, do get in touch or visit our website for more information.